Welcome to Since Rookie Season,
Well, the summer before.
a Heated Rivalry fan companion podcast where your hosts, Amanda, Lau, and Lauren, break down episodes from the Crave Canada television series, the Game Changers novels, and various media surrounding this fan phenomenon.
Today we're looking at the genre that started it all. We have two guests here to discuss the realm of romance novels, so stay tuned to learn a thing or two.
Hi, y'all. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our conversation about feminism and the women of Heated Rivalry last week. We love the women in Heated Rivalry. This week, we're taking a little bit of a different direction. I feel like we almost maybe should have had this conversation like way long ago, but it's fine. We're just placing it at the end of this at the end of the season, which is totally great. This week we have two very close scholar friends of mine on the show, Bree and Katie, and we're going to talk romance novels. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey y'all, my name is Bree. I am Lauren's friend and go by she, her pronouns. I research all things media, both digital and I guess traditional, and I'm a big romance fan. And Lauren got me into Heated Rivalry, but we'll keep talking about that later. But mostly I research Blackness and digital fandom, so right on time.
Exactly. All right. Thank you for that little introduction. Katie, if you'd like to.
Hey, I'm Katie Morrissey. I am an assistant professor at Arizona State University, and I focus on romance across media in my research.
Yes. No, I'm so excited to have both of these people on because Katie is like one of the people that got me into like looking at romance and fandom. And then Brie is also just my romance friend. I send her recs all of the time. And she sends me recs, and we it's very cyclical. We love it. So I want to ask both of you one. Well, I guess Katie just said how you got into Heated Rivalry, but the other question I want to know is like, why do you think it's addictive? Because that's what we're trying to figure out this season. Like, what is so addictive about it? And like, do you think the fact that it like started as a romance novel has like any implications on its addictiveness? So like, yeah, take that away.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, so first of all, as Lauren just said, they introduced me to Heated Rivalry, mainly through other hockey series, the Pucking Around series. I haven't finished it yet, but we have shared a lot of love over that series. And
a lot of something.
So when Heated Rivalry came out, Lauren was like, yo, there's a show coming out about the romance novel, and I'm all the way down for that. But I hadn't gotten to reading it yet and watching it, although it had been on my like pleasure, like I really want to get into this. I think it's addictive for a few reasons. The first thing I text Lauren was like, it's hot. This is hot. It is hot. Their chemistry, like I don't know if I've seen fictional portrayal of anything romance related in a while. It's not as hot as Heated Rivalry is.
And you mean the TV show, right? Like you're talking
Yes,
about that
the TV
specifically.
show.
Yeah.
TV show. Yes. Their chemistry in the book is great too, but like the physical kind of representation of that chemistry is off the charts. It's pretty, like it's shot so beautifully. I love the cinematography. Gorgeous. The kind of storytelling behind the storytelling is amazing. And then, Katie, I'm sure we'll get into it. It has the tropes. It has the things. Like there's several things that are comforting in terms of the romance genre that are present, and that's what's addicting to me. And then of course, like in these days and times that we are living in, knowing that it's working towards like the happy ending, of course. But I mean, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But yeah, it has all the tropes, both
yes.
and the book and the show.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, it's funny. I knew about the romance novels, but I'd been avoiding them. I'm not a sports romance person at all. And I'm not a contemporary romance person either. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, later. But I tend to avoid contemporary romances for the most part. I tend to avoid sports romances completely. And so I knew the books were popular, but I ignored them. However, I'm very interested in queer romance in general. And I've been paying a lot of attention to the different queer romance dramas that are coming out of Asia right now. And so I saw all of a sudden this trailer pop up for this new kind of short series coming out of Canada. And I was like, I wonder if they're paying attention to what's going on in Asia and how many English speaking fans are watching these Asian dramas right now, and consuming them like popcorn. And so I was really interested in the series, and that's kind of from there. Once I watched the series, I went and I read the books and I've kind of absorbed all of it. But my starting point was really kind of being curious about what was going on with television, and how this series. I mean, it's not like Heated Rivalry exists in a vacuum. It's not like Queer as Folk didn't exist, or The L Word didn't exist, or these other kinds of queer dramas haven't existed in North American television before. But we've had a lull for a while, and Heated Rivalry kind of burst in and was this really kind of exciting, kind of seemingly new thing, at least new in terms of the past couple of years. So I think that's kind of how I came to Heated Rivalry. And then in terms of its addictiveness, I think it's really interesting to talk about the book and the TV show on their own, but I also think collectively they're doing something. I think that each of them has their own strengths, and they're each kind of doing different things very well. But collectively, I think that one of the reasons why the story itself is addictive is because there's so many gaps in the narrative. There's so much time jumping. And if you think about fans and what fans thrive on is speculation and filling in gaps and figuring out what's going on. And so I think in terms of like addictiveness and fueling a kind of fan response and fueling rewatching and rereading, there's this way in which the kind of narrative structure of the books and the TV show and the way it jumps in time and you have these kind of gaps in the narrative, I think that really fuels a lot of consumption of these stories. That's one kind of take on the addictiveness. I also think just from a romance perspective, like the thing that always works with genre is you're looking for something that's familiar but also different. And I think both of them very successfully give us things that are familiar but give us new twists on them. So that would be my take on its addictiveness.
Yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
I love your take, Katie.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that before.
As someone who studied literary studies for a long time, this is like my favorite kind of take, and I hope my students, if they're listening, they take that in and remember like how much we love to fill in the blanks, and how much we love to speculate, and how that is one of the best parts about reading and consuming narrative.
Yeah. And if you think about how they end, right? Even in the most recent book that we have, they always end with a little bit of a lack of resolution, right? So even the endings kind of fuel further rereading, further speculation about the future. Like there's this way in which they just constantly kind of drive more from the audience.
Yeah,
totally.
no, I love that. And I've seen so many like really, like we talked about the fan fiction on the pod, and like we love the like social media AU fix where people write as though they are on hockey Twitter and being like, I think these two guys are dating like the entire time, like, and being like writing these complete AUs that are just being like, I am a Holanov shipper in 2013, like I love hockey. And so I love that kind of stuff, and I think that really speaks to what you were just saying. But also I want to I think your point that you said about like we crave something familiar is like, but something that's different. I think that's a great segue into kind of just talking about like romance novels in genre, or like romance novels in general. So like, have we all, before we encountered this, have we all read romance novels? Like I specifically, Brie and I went through like a period of like in like 2023 or 2024 where I read like 150 hockey romance novels, like both straight and like gay. And I was like, I literally kept like a recording of like, this one was good, this one was bad, this one was good. And like
also started going to the physical games. Let me just throw that out there.
Yes. No, and it like got me into hockey. Like it's like crazy. So, but like, I mean, I definitely read romance novels when I was like younger because like they were smutty and like it wasn't as like serious as going online to like Pornhub. It was like I can read my smut and nobody will know what it's about, So But I read like the Dear John, like all the Nicholas Sparks stuff, because I felt like that was really popular when I was like growing up. So that was kind of like my introduction to romance novels, and then it kind of just spiraled from there. So I think now I definitely read a lot of fan fiction that has a lot of similarities to romance novels, but not so much romance novels themselves as much anymore. But I also go through phases too. Katie, Bree, whatever, one of y'all want to jump in about romance novels?
I would say I just grew up surrounded by them. My grandmother was a huge romance novel reader, got them in the mail on the regular. And because that's how you got them back in the day.
That's
Like
a
you mail
dream.
ordered your
I love
romance
that.
novels and they'd show up
I
one
love
a
that.
month, right? And so I kind of grew up around them. When I was in grad school, part of the reason why I started studying romance is because I was trying to understand why my mother, myself, and I had such different tastes in romance. We were all clearly interested in it, but we were all clearly interested in very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely have been surrounded by them, but I've always had a very love-hate relationship with conventional commercial romance novels. They didn't work for me. Fan fiction worked for me. Queer romance worked for me, but straight romance, I always struggled with. And so in terms of it's very subjective, right? Why this happens, how people come to different kinds of romance, I think is a very personal thing. But for me, I often kind of can't connect to the female protagonists. And so I find myself wanting to kind of read something that doesn't often have a female protagonist because it's easier for me to enjoy it. But so in that sense, I've always been surrounded by romance, but my romance tastes, I feel like, are always kind of weird and capricious. And I'll suddenly like a romantic comedy and then I'll hate 5 others, or I'll read a contemporary heterosexual romance and love it, and then I'll read 20 others and not like them. So I think my taste is just weird in general when it comes to romance, but I've definitely grown up very exposed to it.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
That's so interesting. As I was listening to both of you, I was thinking about how the Anglophone versus the Hispanophone publishing industry works. I don't think we're so that exposed. Like, I think now with globalization, with all of these novels being adapted into movies or series, now we're getting more. But it was not as common for people around me to be reading romance novels. We will like people will usually scratch that itch with telenovelas, and
Yeah.
I grew up in this family who was like really into literature, and I went into literature studies in college. And so of course we will never, like, the program will never, unless it's like a 19th century canonical novel that one could argue is a romance novel in a different disguise, you know. And I think the way I ended up reading romance was through my quest to find queer stories. And I don't read straight romance. I have no interest in it. As everyone, I did grow up with rom-coms and straight rom-coms, but as a reader, if it doesn't have queer people in it, I couldn't care less. But it is quite interesting to see how the presence of romance novels has become more evident in like libraries and bookstores here in Colombia in the last decade, whereas before it was not there as much. I think the first time like someone around me even brought up like something smutty and just love, it was 50 Shades of Grey, because it became
That's what I
like
was
this
gonna say.
global phenomenon. But before that, unless it was a 19th century thing, it was not
Yeah.
on my radar. So that's actually very interesting. I've never thought about that before.
Well, it's funny because part of what you're getting at too is the way that what we call a romance novel, we talk about that as if it's a universal thing that exists across the globe. And what we're talking mostly, at least for myself, like I'm an American, right? What I know of as a romance novel is something that's a very North American and to some extent UK phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking about something that was really codified by Harlequin and by Mills and Boon.
Yeah.
And it's spread out to other publishers and it's spread out globally, but there's a certain kind of specificity and location to the genre too that we don't always pay as much attention to.
Yeah, to the point
Yeah.
that to me, I still struggle when I say romance novels, because what I'm thinking is novels written in romance languages. That is where my brain is taking me.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was talking to my partner in Spanish, and I was saying like we were gonna do this episode, and I said like novelas de romance or something like that, and he was like, you know that romance is a genre in itself, and and I was like, yeah, I have no idea how to translate this, and it took me
Mhm.
a while to get to like, oh, of course it's just like novelas de amor and that's it. But it wasn't even on my vocabulary outside of my anglophone persona
Yeah.
to talk about this genre, so that's fascinating.
Right, and then you get into like the romantics of like British literature, which is like a
Uh-huh.
whole nother thing,
Yeah.
which is romance with a capital R, which
Mhm.
is not what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. So there you are, like a scholar in Spanish, trying to like explain to people what we five of us are talking about today, and I have to translate that. Nightmare.
Nightmare.
Completely. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, Amanda, Bree, romance novel reading.
So my name is from a romance novel because my mom was a fan. She added an extra N and E on it. So I guess the twins were Irish, and one was O'Brien, and the other one was O'Brien, or like spelled differently. And
Mhm.
so she added an N and an E on it, and then that's how she got my name. And then, ironically, or maybe tragically, or traumatically, I don't know, but that's how I started to read as well. So my mom would read out loud her romance novels to me.
Oh.
And then she said that I recognized I, a, the, like my sight words. So I feel like I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. Okay.
That's amazing.
That's
You
iconic.
know, I couldn't wait to tell that story.
Fascinating.
And so I think from there, by the time, I started to get into the genre myself, my aunt had this book called Fly Girl by Omar Tyree. Also, positionality wise, I'm black and a millennial. And there's a very specific time of urban fiction for me once I became a teenager, where Fly Girl, which is this kind of adult, kind of coming of age, not really a romance novel, was being circulated around in high school. So people would share them kind of like drugs almost, I guess, where you're trying to learn about it and read it. Like the next best thing. Sister Soldier's Coldest Winter Ever is also a cult classic, as well as for those of us who were queer or queer-ish or just was gobbling up everything. Elin Harris had some romance novels of like DL or closeted gay men that also circulated around with these black girls, that all came out in like the 90s. But then this kind of trajectory of us when we got to like the late 90s started really circulating this. And that was a part of how I came to romance novels. And then went back to historical straight novels with the kind of like very much so Harlequin esque genre specific tropey things, but also like a lot of black history. So I learned about Indigo. So like the Met Gala, what is her name? She just had a nod to the indigo plantations. Anyway, I learned about that in this black historical romance novel. So even being a student of black studies, the romance novels were also a part of that. And then, of course, I think being in literature and then reading a lot of the Victorian stuff and Jane Austen and all of that was a part of like the more scholarly stuff. But definitely there was an ecosystem. There's jokes about it on social media now of if you're a certain age, you just circulated these kind of urban works by straight men even, and other romance novels or urban fiction novels that had not romance novels, but
Mhm.
works with romance and smart sex right in it, as opposed to like what I then discovered on my own were traditional romance novels that I would pick up from Walmart for $5, and that would be my like entertainment for the weekend. Every weekend a new romance novel, or go to the library.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's so fun. I feel like it's so different because I'm a Zoomer, I'm Gen Z, and so y'all are millennials. And I feel like we have different experiences with this. My family were not readers. I was the reader in my family. I didn't grow up. My mom watched like Hallmark and like whatever, so I had like basically the televised version of what I feel like romance novels were. But to me, growing up, I feel like romance novels were like the stereotypical like Fabio on the cover, like that whole like uh, like that was my understanding of like romance. I did not know they were smutty until I was like a teenager or older or something. But for me growing up, it was like the coming of age, like you were saying, Brie, but also like I am just at heart such a fantasy person that I like romantasy is kind of my jam. Like when I was a teenager, I was reading like if there was romance, it was romantasy. Like it was like Vampire Academy or God, some other there's just so many that circulate in my head. I'm like, did I dream that up or was that like a book I swallowed at like 13 in the middle of the night? You know, like that kind of stuff. Or was it like supernatural fan fiction? So, but for me, it's also like if it is more like romance, it has to be queer. There were some, or like over the pandemic, straight romances I read, like when Icebreaker was big, when hockey romances and like that kind of stuff, like Icebreaker was huge. I read that. But for me, it's like, although I will say Allie Hazelwood, I have liked her stuff. I've read a few of her books. I think those are fun and light. But Katie, what you said earlier about them being just like, not like predictable, but like we know there's the happy ending. Like they're just like almost comforting in a way. I do find them very comforting and that the stakes are low. Like no one's going to die. They don't have to save the world. And so I enjoy them that way, in the way that it's like, oh, like for me it's like a beach read, like it's casual and fun and light, and there's like some angst but it's not crazy. Whereas like fantasy is where I really can get like, I get so lost in that and I'm so like they're riding dragons or they're wielding magic and it's Percabeth and it's all of this.
Percabeth mentioned one.
I have to put it in at least once per episode. But yeah, for me, I feel like romantasy is a preference. If there's going to be romance, I prefer it to be queer romantasy, which is sometimes hard to come by good queer romantasy, because I've been reading a lot of romantasy and I'm like, it's good, but it's just so like, there's so many tropes where I'm like, you can't have all of the tropes. Like she can't be a fighter and a healer and pretty and all of these things. And it's so, I have gripes, but, and then she got killed, whatever. I beef with these authors right now. But yeah, it's hard to find good queer romantasy. So I will take Rex if you have them, but
yes.
Yeah, romantasy, if we're talking subgenres and such, that's my love.
So you hate a Mary Sue is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't know what a Mary Sue is.
No.
Mary Sues are like, they were like, in fanfiction, they're almost like author self-inserts kind of, but it's like the character that has no flaws and like she's like gorgeous and thin and has straight blonde hair and like can do all of the things and
yeah,
like,
I think I'm the chosen one, but when you make her so perfect, I'm like, I appreciate her and I love how down to earth she is, but then the main character, or like the love interest, because I feel like they've moved away from the love interest as like a knight in shining armor to the dark, like daring, like I'm a devil and blah blah blah, like a very like menacing, but then he's got such a soft spot for her, and like I get it, but also like you guys, I was like, I feel like I can predict what you're gonna say and how you're gonna act, where it's like you're gonna kill for her and blah 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 blah. Like, no, literally, this, I can tell what this author's next book is going to be, because it's literally, she's about to put him through the hero's journey. He has to go into the underworld to, like, rescue the soul of his, like, their souls are twined from the fates. And I'm like, I've already written the book in my head. It's not fun anymore. I've predicted it. I just haven't told anyone about this book, so I need to tell you all who understand that I'm experiencing this right now.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I guess that's like, you know, kind of what makes you DNF or do not finish. I would say, yeah, bad writing. Like, at one point I was doing, like, the Kindle Unlimited, where you, like, pay the price and then you just read every shitty book under Kindle Unlimited. And that's why I read 150 novels in a year. Because I was just like, oh, every book that has hockey in it.
I was up to 89 by the time the year ended,
Yes. And then I was like, I need to stop giving Jeff Bezos my money. So here we are with that. But yeah, I would say like a do not finish is like, one time I read like this fic where the like FMC had ADHD, but it was like every bad stereotype about ADHD. And I was like, girl, please.
FMC is feminine main character or female main character.
Yes, if you're not aware. But yeah, I would say like I definitely am a little pickier than I thought. And honestly, like we've talked about it on the pod before, but I didn't like the Heated Rivalry books. Because I don't think they're good. I am Rachel Reed's #1 hater. If she has no haters, it's because I'm dead, basically.
You're the fan, like the fandom hate club, like you're the top of that.
That's
Oh,
the
probably
anti-fan.
The anti.
I am the anti-fan, and I'm the anti-fan for also all of the racism. But so yeah, I would say there's definitely things that if I come across it, I'm like, I'm not gonna read this book anymore. I will like bad grammar, like a boring plot line. I've started, honestly, I don't know if this is a trend that you all have noticed, but they've been doing like fandom tags before the book starts, and it'll be like, this is what you can find in this book, like enemies to lovers and like all of these things. And I'm like, okay, that's
Spoiler.
great. Thanks for letting me know, but that's not what I'm doing when I'm reading a romance book. Like that's what I'm doing when I'm reading fan fiction. And like I don't want you to tell me all the spoilers before I start a romance book.
Like,
So,
I get it, they
I don't
put a
know.
trigger warning. Like, I understand if there's gonna be like gore or like non-consensual stuff, like whatever. I appreciate that, or like family death. But when you're tagging it like it's AO3, I'm a little like, what are no? That's part of the plot.
The thing that's tricky about that, though, is that's a long-standing tradition in romance. That's not new.
It
Like
is?
oh yeah. I mean, you typically like you kind of have. This is part of the kind of thing with romance novels is you kind of know what your lane is, and you know which publications, which series, which imprints are going to be kind of publishing in your lane, and then the language on the back covers is very coded so that romance readers know what's going to be kind of going on, and they're signaling that the terminology is merging as online platforms kind of merge those audiences, but those traditions, they're not stealing it from fandom. It predates fandom in a lot of ways.
Okay, so I thought they were stealing it from fandom, and so that's why I've been pissed off at it, but I guess it's the other way around.
No, well, it's not. I think it's more complicated. Like, I think there's a way in which the language is emerging because everyone's using Goodreads. Everyone's kind of using the same social media platforms. They're being marketed in particular ways on the same platform. So that kind of terminology is starting to kind of collapse, whereas it used to be more separated. But romance novels have always kind of signaled their contents to their readers.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Actually, we would love if you like could give us a romance novel history little background ditty if you would like to.
I can give you a very, very rough and crude romance history with the caveat that I will probably forget something and leave something out. But I think the thing is, well, first, romance has existed since the dawn of time, right? So there's that. But if we're thinking about what we call a romance novel in North America today, it really starts to kind of codify in the 1900s when we start to see publishing taking off. When you start to see, particularly in the 70s and 80s, the paperback market boom kind of exploding. Now, romance novels existed before that, for sure. But the paperback boom of the 1970s and 80s is huge here. That's when we start to see a huge uptick in science fiction. That's when we start to see a huge uptick in fantasy. That's when we start to see a huge uptick in genre in general in publishing. That's when the paperback stores like Walden Books come to your local shopping malls, all that stuff. And so that's when a lot of what we think about as romance novels today really gets kind of solidified. But they existed before that. So I'm really shortcutting some of the older history. But, you know, the commercial romance novel, the idea that you have different kinds, some are steamy and some are sweet, and that you have these different types, and Harlequin has their different lanes for whether you want contemporary or historical. A lot of that starts to emerge in the 70s and the 80s. There are huge publishing wars during that time. Massive infighting is going on between Harlequin and other publishers. That's also a big influence here. That's when you start to see more and more American romance novels getting produced. Before, a lot of them were British and being republished in America. And that's when you start to see romance getting a little more diverse. I say that with some caveats. So things start happening in the industry during that time. And then you kind of chug along for a while. I guess the thing I should say that I didn't say is that sex comes to romance in the 1970s, right? Sex starts to appear on the page in romance in the 1970s, which is a really big deal at the time. Harlequin was not into that at all. It was coming from a rival publisher, Avon, that was really kind of pushing the sex on the page.
Wow.
That's part of the wars that were going on in the 80s were partly about who was publishing sex on the page versus who wasn't. And that was influencing where readers were going and what they were buying. So there's all kinds of fascinating stuff going on during that period. But the next big shift happens with e-publishing, right, in the early 2000s. And that's when you really start to see, again, another big kind of explosion in, again, a bit more diversity. That's where you start to see more queer romance coming out, and things kind of really shifting with online publishing. It's kind of where what we've been kind of building on over the past 20-ish years, is kind of really kind of reshaping, what used to be a very, very heterosexual kind of commercial genre into something that's much more about niche markets and much more about e-publishing and different kinds of readers and different kinds of audiences, all kinds of finding their lane and sticking with it. I'm not sure that's a great history, but that's my quick history if you put me on the spot.
No, and we love that. Was a great history. That was exactly what I wanted to know. No, and I think that's super interesting because I think we definitely see, like, especially when we look at like the age in fandom and like the people who are fans of this show, like it is a lot of people who are like older millennials or even into like Gen Xers. Like, not to say that there isn't Gen Z or Gen Alpha folks in the fandom, but like on Threads, it's mostly millennials and Gen X, like, and people who grew up with reading like romance novels at home, have been longtime purveyors of the material.
And I would just add to that in terms of for Black romance in particular, some of what I was talking about were books with like romantic longing rather than the romance genre. So it wasn't until like those houses that Katie mentioned started to try to publish Black authors that you got more traditional romance novels in the 90s. So even what my mother was reading to me were white authors. And then now, again, just to say that I would say now there's been a influx of different genres of Black romance, queer, urban, or not, because of the digital, right? Being able to go around those publishing houses. So that's even more so when you add in other factors like race.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was going to say, there's also a really long history in romance publishing, but also things like romance movies, things like that, where you'll see this differentiation where things that are labeled romance tend to be the stories about white couples, and things that are labeled urban or urban is a kind of big kind of catch-all term. Often romances about Black people will get kind of segregated out into things like urban comedy instead of romantic comedy. And it's the same with publishing too. You'll have stories that are essentially romances, but they won't necessarily be packaged and sold as romances. So a lot of it's about kind of marketing language too.
Yeah, for sure. And like I even think about like with romances and when we're talking about disability, like how disability is like perceived as something that is in the like way of the happily ever after, and that like you have to either like the disabled person feels like they're not worthy of love because of their disability, or they feel like they need to like heal their disability in order to be loved, which I guess is kind of the same thing. Like how that is continually something that is like overwritten throughout all of these novels. And like now I am starting to see kind of, and like a little bit more of inclusion of disability and like talked about in ways that isn't like disgusting and like we need to get rid of all disabled folks, but like I think it is like something that still has a really long way to go within romance novels itself. And like when I'm reading, when I was reading those 150 hockey romance novels, like none of them were about Black people, which I mean hockey doesn't have Black people in it, but like Bree was like specifically recommending like Black hockey romance to me, and it was often that stuff was more paywalled than the like free Kindle Unlimited stuff about white people all of the time. So it's just like also looking at the availability on the market and like whose stories are written and not written. I mean, that's something we talk about all the time too. So thinking about like romance novels in general, I mean, we talked about mostly heterosexual, but I want to talk more about like queer romance. So like, who do we think like these things are marketed towards? Like, who do we think Heated Rivalry is marketed towards? Like, or traditional romance novels in general? Like,
definitely straight women.
Straight women. Okay, so like, why do we think that?
I think there's a slight fetishizing aspect as well, but also like I think we've said before, like the emotionally intelligent men and being vulnerable with their feelings and like being exposed, and there's a touch of like it's so complicated. I feel like seeing a man take a woman's position, quote unquote, in these romance novels, I think has something to do with it as well, especially like romance, like seeing them do to each other perhaps what is usually being done to them, or maybe on the other side, like seeing someone do to something else what is being done to them, but in like because I was thinking like as like a bottom, but if you think about it like a top point of view, there's like I that was it provides
We're just like, all right, let's talk
framework.
about sex immediately.
But also in terms of like dynamics and like who has power and who doesn't and who is in control. And I think that and then romances, by kind of flipping a script, can provide different insights into a different dynamic and these different experiences that women may or may not have. I think that that's part of it as well. So, and also women, as I think I forget who, someone said before that like women don't do wrong things in these books typically. Like there is no woman to be blamed for whatever. I mean, maybe depending on the book, but like Heated Rivalry specifically in Game Changers, there's like the women are like supportive figures and they're not being like trashed basically.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's interesting about Heated Rivalry, though, is it complicates our idea that these books and these shows are only for women and only for straight women. Because I think I have very conflicted feelings about the argument that MM romance is quote unquote only for straight women. And I think my conflict is this. Clearly, a lot of women are reading these books and watching different kinds of queer romance, but it's not all straight women. A lot of those women are not straight. But then on top of that, the complication is I think we exist in a culture that has a very hard time with the idea that these things could be for anyone but women, right? I think we really struggle with the idea of a male reader or the idea of a male viewer that would like this. I think that's a cultural problem. Yep. And so I don't know how I feel about the argument that they're quote unquote only for straight women, because I really want to resist it. I think it's something that we're trapped in that is problematic, but I also think that Heated Rivalry in and of itself complicates it, right? Because first of all, if you look at the fans of the TV show, if you look at social media, it's way more diverse than just women. There are a lot of women, but it's way more diverse than that. If you think about Jacob Tierney as a showrunner, right? Like, here's this guy who explicitly wants to make this show and kind of complicate our ideas of who the audiences for these things are. So I don't know. I feel like there's truth to the argument that a lot of women are into this. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I also just wonder how much we're trapped in thinking about that because of our own ideas about femininity, about romance, because the stigmas about romance.
Yes.
I don't know. Like, I just wonder how much of it is us kind of being brainwashed to only see that as much as it is also in some part also true, right? I don't know how to kind of reconcile my complicated feelings about this.
I don't necessarily like agree with what I said either. I'm just saying that I feel like from the like abstract perspective of the like people who are like, I feel like traditionally like that has been the argument of the like, oh, who reads the like the Fabio books and the whatever, and who is into like sort of these like things. Historically, it's been like, oh, usually it is straight women because like like there hasn't always been like a mainstream market for queer people. And so now that we do have people like Jacob Tierney who say like, okay, let's put these queer experiences out there, I think we can be like, actually, not rainbow washing, but we can have queer people as a market in a normal way.
Yeah, what I wanted to say was that maybe the way to see this is the difference between what was the public in mind for the marketing. You know, like marketing definitely was thinking straight women and probably white women, right? So they had a very specific public in mind, and then how it ends up being received by the public, it's what makes this such an interesting phenomenon. It's how it like it really breached containment in a way that I don't think the publishers were anticipating before. I don't even think Crave Canada was anticipating that when they agreed to do an adaptation. And I think in general there's the marketing that is like selling us this idea that Katie was explaining about who reads this, who's interested in this, and how we have been socialized to gender this idea of the type of literature we should be interested in, how like more feminized quote unquote genres tend to be like guilty pleasures because like women are less intelligent than men, blah blah blah. But at the same time, I think there's also the marketing invisibilization of not not just like queer people, but of lesbians. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
we know that lesbians consume a lot of romance,
Mm-hmm.
especially because it like you get a better chance of having a happy ending than if you read lesbian romance. So you have that as well, and I think it's like what makes me so proud about what is happening with Heated Rivalry is how we basically taught the publishing industry a lesson about not
Mm.
underestimating queer communities as potential readers, and not just like assuming that this was gonna be like the mothers of One Direction fandom, you know, or like 50 Shades that were as again like targeting stay-at-home moms that
Yeah.
were like quite bored in their marriage. Like there's this idea first that that straight people hate their partners and they're bored and that they have awful sex. So they're the ones like trying to live some sort of fantasy through the books. And there is this idea of like who likes men? Straight women like men. So if I put
Mm.
two male torsos in my cover of the book, I'm definitely gonna catch that.
Yeah.
And I can picture a lot of gay men besides Jacob Tierney seeing that cover and being like, mine, thank you.
No, literally. And like, yeah, I mean, like Jacob Tierney was the one who approached Rachel Reed and was like,
Yeah.
I want to make a show out of this, you know? And I do want to say, like, there is a caveat that, like, I think the fandom has been negative towards gay men. And we've seen that kind of over and over
Mm.
again, where, like, gay men have been complaining that women in the Heated Rivalry fandom are kicking them out of like spaces where they're
Yeah.
watching the show, or like shunning them away from like interacting with the media. But I think like, I mean,
Or
I did
Lauren,
a
also that infamous comment that a
oh
friend of ours brought up in our fan mail of someone lecturing, yeah.
yeah, it was like this person being like, somebody was saying how Heated Rivalry, like it really was like something they connected with because it was like their own story of like why they were afraid to come out. And this other person, and they were like, I can feel for Shane because I've also dated women because I've been afraid to like be queer. And somebody like commented on it and was like, you shouldn't do that to straight women. Like you shouldn't lie to them about that. And we were like, ah, okay. So this is a totally different group of people that we're
I
talking to.
actually I think this person didn't even say I have dated women in the past.
Yes, yeah.
That person was just like, I'm figuring out my sexuality. I've been very
Yeah.
scared. I'm in the closet. I hope my mom is gonna react the way Shane's mom reacts, but I don't think she will. And
Yeah.
someone unprompted just goes and comments like, just please don't use straight women as like a beard and don't lie to them because it's traumatic. And everyone was like,
Wait, what is going on?
who's talking about dating?
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I think it's like, I did like a survey on archive of our own demographics. And because I think like romance and fan fiction have so many intersections, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a few minutes, something that we kind of like came across in our survey data was that fandom is getting queerer and it is getting like more gender diverse, not racially diverse, but more gender diverse. And so the like straight women who like white straight women who dominate fandom are less dominating. Like it's now mostly bisexual people. It's now people who are non-binary, you know. And so yeah, I think it's a complicated issue, but I think marketing definitely plays into it for sure.
I think, Katie, to go back to the kind of how you're trying to complicate this, is I had wrote an article trying to get to this in this small way about Swarm, which was like this meta, I don't know, attempt at analysis of Beyonce fandom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and within it, though, I want to turn it into an academic article, but to give me more space, I guess. But a part of it is also that the societally, the who gets too long, who gets to have romantic feelings, is also feminized,
Mm-hmm.
so that that kind of thread goes through with the romance novel trope.
Mm-hmm.
And so society and marketing and all that wise is showing this in this way, although for the evidence of this podcast, right? And what you all are seeing, the people who are listening as well, that is not 100% true. but then also what is then respected as well in terms of who gets to long is also feminized. And we know that femininity or feminization generally is also not like a good thing
Yeah.
in the Western kind of context, right? So that I'm wrestling with that same question with you, Katie, but I'm just thinking about like just the affect of like who gets too long, which is a part of the genre of romance. And I think that that's also what Heated Rivalry in particular makes it addictive. That's what I wanted to go back to that too, because they long for a long ass time. Not right? Like their longing is like, whoo, like this is some longing, okay,
Yes.
here that is going on. And so since they're longing for so long, it's like another level to the longing of romance. And that's what makes it fiery. And like, I'm rooting for you. Can y'all get y'all shit together? Can society get shit together?
Can you please communicate? Can you communicate,
And then
please?
like, okay, when was it, when did the shit go to the Supreme Court and like all this stuff? So yeah, that longing part of it is like so central to the novel itself, and then obviously in the show, but it's also disrespected as like a as a feminized affective trait,
Yeah.
which complicates the whole conversation that we're having, to go back.
I
Right.
actually, Brie, I really love what you're saying, because I think the last years have brought that a lot. Like, it's either feminized or infantilized. Of course, with romance novels that have a lot of smut, it's less infantilized, so it's more feminized. But I'm thinking as well of like Heartstopper and this phenomenon of Heartstopper that started like 5 years ago, and how it was
Could
like,
you break it down?
yeah,
I don't know if Bree's seen Heartstopper.
She has not.
Where is Amanda?
Lau mentions it
Oh.
once an episode at least.
Amanda, after all this time. Okay, so it's a graphic novel, and it's written by a non-binary person, and it was adapted by Netflix. Well, by Seesaw Film and bought by Netflix, and it keeps like the whimsy of like young love. It's very cute. It's very pastel, because it's aimed at like young queers. But of course, this was like huge among adult queers as well, because we were like, oh, a love story that ends well and that is not traumatic and that doesn't depend on violence to tell the story. Where do I get this? But there was also like a lot of discourse making adults feel bad about enjoying Heartstopper because it's like for kids, disregarding completely like all the very complex psychologic reasons why, as a person who grew up in the closet or had like a very difficult queer youth, you want to see new generations get different stories, and you want those stories because you didn't have it at the age that you should have. And it's actually like super good storytelling. And Alice Osman draws that the graphic novel ended like a month ago, and I just love it. Everything is amazing. It's like my beloved. I have a tattoo of the Heartstopper leaves on my body. Like, I love it. And I think that yeah, that's what you get. Like, you're either told like, oh, that's for girls, as like little girls that like pastel and like cute stuff, and no boy or macho or adult woman is allowed to enjoy that, or that is just like for the silly women that laugh in the bathroom together talking about boys.
Yeah.
And that's why like I appreciate phenomenons like Heartstopper, because there was a lot written about it from the adult perspective, and how it healed some people, how it made a lot of people feel like able to come out at like 27, 40 years old. Like it really shook more than just the target public. And another example of this that I really enjoy, that kind of like breaks out of this expectation that we put into this genre, is all the Casey McQuiston's books.
Yeah.
Because that, yeah, you start with Red, White, and Royal Blue, and that is like the most mainstream one.
One Last Stop, My
And then
Beloved.
But then you have One Last Stop, Our Beloved. Then you have a YA novel, suddenly, I Kissed Sarah Wheeler, that is kind of like a murder mystery, but not. And then you have the masterpiece that is The Pairing, that came out 2 years ago. That you would say, like, when you started, you say, like, oh, is this a straight couple? And then you start going into gender and into, like, queerness beyond, like, the traditional lesbians or gays or straights, like, you go beyond the binary, and it's magnificent. It's about food and wine and Europe, and there's a lot of queer sex, of queering of how to have intimacy. And I think nobody expected that, because the three previous books were like One Last Stop, I love it. It's like a ghost story with science fiction, with a queer romance, all in one. But McQuiston had, like, stayed in a lane of, like, it's either a lesbian or lesbian with bisexual woman and gay with bisexual man love story. But The Pairing is, for me, it was like mind blowing. I want to reread it a couple more times, because it really plays with gender. It plays with stuff that I don't think people are expecting when they start reading it. And you don't get that from the cover of the book. And you don't get that from the argument of the book when you read the summary online. So it really is not, the marketing is not targeting queer people, besides the fact that queer people know that Casey Quinston is going to write a queer story. So I love to see how we have evolved to the point where we're opening the space to different type of stories, and to, like, a more mix in terms of gender and sexual identity fandoms of this. And that we can say, like, Heated Rivalry is a masterpiece, and you don't have to be like, oh, it's my guilty pleasure to be watching players. But I think there's a long way to go still.
Yeah. Katie, I know we've maybe diverged from your point earlier, but what were you going to jump in when we all jumped in?
Oh, I was just thinking about what Brie had said about affect. I think there's something to, like, this might be too, like, in the weeds, but, like, there's this thing
No.
in film and media studies where there's been a lot of analysis of melodrama as a genre and who gets to kind of feel the melodrama. And melodrama is, like, traditionally being these like kind of women's films that were made in the 1950s that were often somewhat tragic and involved you going to the movies and crying a lot and it being very cathartic. And I was thinking, we talk a lot about that as a women's genre, and how, like, there's a lot of scholarship on how that kind of emotion is only allowed to women. But I think what Brie was getting at was a different kind of emotion, like that fluttery kind of squee, to use the fan term, feeling that you get from a lot of romance that's more comedic, that's more upbeat, right? And who's allowed to feel that feeling, right? We have guilty pleasures around that feeling. We're not supposed to feel that feeling. Sorry, my cat's making a cameo right now.
It happens
But
every episode.
Totally fine.
But, like, that like happy, warm, oh my god, my heart is fluttering, oh my god, I'm so immersed in this moment, or oh my god, this moment's so sexy, like, that's really policed in our culture. And I think that's partly why I get so conflicted about this kind of insistence that say romance is only for straight women, because I feel like part of that insistence is a policing, as much as there are parts of it that are true. I just don't think it's universally 100% true. And I think we really need to kind of complicate that, because partly in insisting that it's true, we're just enhancing the policing even more. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that just, it frustrates me that more audiences aren't acknowledged in that mix, because I think a lot of different readers and watchers enjoy those feelings too.
Yeah, that also really makes me also think about, like, Katie, I know you were saying kind of at the beginning, but you do a lot of research into, like, yaoi and BL, and looking at, like, how, like, Chinese and, like, is it mostly, like, Chinese, like,
It's mostly, well, the big hub for BL dramas is Thailand.
yes, yeah. So, like, how does that, like, BL stands for boys love, we've talked about it a little bit before, but, like, how does that differ from, like, like, North American romance novel? And, like, are there similar, because, like, if we think about it, Heated Rivalry is technically BL, like, it could be concerned, or, like, it could be assumed to be BL, but, like, how is that different, and like what kind of genre, or like what kind of people does that attract, and things like that, like how we're trying to break this down.
Well, I think it's complicated again. And I'm not like, the go-to expert here. There's other folks who've written a lot about this. But I think that, for example, there's a really good book by Thomas Baudinet that's all about boys love media. And one of the things that he talks about, he particularly is looking at the Thai dramas. And one of the things he talks about is how for the industry in Thailand, it's often seen as a medium for advertising to younger Thai women. However, in research on the audiences for these dramas, Baudinet finds that there's a much more diverse audience. There's a very queer audience, and that a lot of different people across Asia are watching these Thai dramas. A lot of queer people across Asia are watching these Thai dramas because they speak to a queer Asian perspective in a way that, say, Western media content is not addressing. So it's kind of complicated to kind of compare and contrast them with Western content, because it's like, they're all cross influencing each other. But at the same time, one of the things that Baudinet finds is that there is something kind of important about having representation coming directly out of Asian countries for Asian audiences. He finds that important, like across different kind of countries in Asia. These genres are kind of circulating. But yes, in terms of, again, we're back to the marketing problem. In terms of, the companies that are producing these dramas, the advertisements that appear in the dramas, the ways that the products are being sold around them, a lot of it is assumed to be for a female audience in Thailand or in other Asian countries. But the reality that Baudinet finds is that it's more complicated than that. Yeah. And then, I mean, to get into to start to compare the different ones, that's where it gets tricky, right? Because Thailand has its approach to BL dramas, Japan has its approach, Korea has its approach. China has censorship, and it gets way more complicated. But there's still all these cross flows across that region. And then, of course, there's all these cross flows outside of Asia into Western markets too. So there's tons of cross influences here.
Yeah, for sure. I think also something that I just remembered that I wanted to talk about a little bit is that in the fandom right now, we're seeing kind of a lot of discourse that Rachel Reed never included things about racism in her romance novel because she views it as just a silly little romance novel that has no extenuating circumstances beyond its current readers, and it's just supposed to be about smut. And I've been having fights with people on the internet, which I know I shouldn't be doing, but anyways, about trying to be hey, media does not exist in a vacuum, and we kind of have to talk about racism in these stories, especially if your main character is going to be a person of color, because that informs so many other things. And then people just being well, it's my fan object, I don't want to think about racism, it's a silly little romance novel, I just want to read about these hockey players fucking each other. So I don't know, if we're talking and we're saying these are not just silly little romance novels, they are not, we shouldn't treat the audience of these as something that is just a silly little romance novel or whatever. How do we contend with that, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. And that's for anybody.
I mean, hasn't this always been this way since the dawn of time? I just remember fans in the 1990s complaining when some fans would criticize something as being racist, and other fans would say, oh, how dare you bring your political discourse into my happy place? It's isn't it convenient that you can ignore these things and other people can't, right? This is this kind of endless problem with this kind of media.
Yeah, it's what I've been saying the last few weeks. What does that mean? When you stop and actually think about it, what you're asking is for a white utopia where you don't have to think about racism because you don't have to think about it, or are you asking for escapism utopia where racism is not a thing? Because I think when people tell quote unquote minorities to not bring that into their happy places, they're usually asking for a narrative that is devoided of anything that is not white and the norm. And I don't think they know that a lot of the times. I don't think people understand that that's what they're asking. But I do think when you start asking them questions about okay, so what would be for you like the ideal situation here? How would you deal with this in a way that it doesn't like disturb your peace? The answer that you get to is like they basically don't want to deal with it because they don't care. And with this, I don't want to like erase all the POC queer people that are like, I just have to think about this every single day, that so I want to escape it. But they're usually not the people getting super mad at Lauren on threads because Lauren is pointing out the racism. They're just like, I'm not gonna engage in this on social media because I have to do this every single day and defend my identity every single day. But I don't think like those are the people that are like, oh, please don't go after Rachel Reed because of the microaggressions that we have seen her display when
Continue to do outside in professional
yeah.
capacities and all the time, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like, yeah, I mean, this is obviously like a conversation that we've had in fandom, like Katie was saying, like, you know, there is constant, like with the anti-fan thing, like you oftentimes are labeled an anti-fan because you're like, hey, I'm calling out racism and you guys are saying I just don't like this object, you know. And I think that like definitely is something that I think the fandom contends with. I guess what we can do now, we've kind of talked romance novels a little bit. Let's talk about Heated
Yeah.
Rivalry as a romance novel. Let's talk about this, and also as like a TV show as a piece of romance like architecture. So yeah, does anybody want to kind of take the wheel and go from there?
Jump in real quick. Just as I was watching the show, Heated Rivalry also reminded me a lot of Noah's Ark from Logo from back in the day, like the kind of longing and the will they, won't they. I mean, you know, the all of the kind of tropey genres and kind of sighing like, oh, I wish, you know, this person we were dating, this was my boyfriend that I experienced with Noah's Ark back in the day here. It's been like 20 years almost. And so, and then like, you know, the kind of coming back to that story. But Heated Rivalry, you know, like you've already said, has this long genealogy and trajectory of these type of shows. But I would say specifically Noah's Ark, because it was this kind of romantic genre type romantic comedy of a show that is a little bit different than like Queer as Folk or, you know, other queer shows that came out at the time, or, you know, the genealogy of queer shows. And HR definitely fits into that. Heated Rivalry fits into that, but it definitely reminded me of Noah's Ark. And I'm like, I need to go and dust off my DVDs or mine. I do have
my physical media. I need to
I
go
do
find
have
it
physical
again.
media sets. I do have the analog physical media sets of Noah's Ark, which was this black queer friends type of Sex in the City in LA in West Hollywood, you know, and all their adventures in Los Angeles. It was really good on Logo for 2 seasons, and this was Logo pre Drag Race, so you know it was like a little bit different. Yeah.
It was one of their first shows, I think. I think it was one of their first original series.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, Brie was
That's
mentioning it
amazing.
earlier
Yeah.
when we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, we always bring up like Queer as Folk and the L Word and stuff, but I feel like there have been so many queer shows, and like especially like queer romance shows. What was that crazy dating show that was like the Ultimatum or something? Like it was like queer couples would go on this show
There
and
was yes,
decide.
yes, there was a famous couple that was from that show that lived in Orlando. We were at the same Les Vixens event.
So
Everyone was
basically,
like, "Oh my god, they're in that show."
this show was like you would go on it and you would break up with your partner and you would date other people. The Ultimatum, Queer Love, this is all it's called. It's on Netflix. It's basically like they would go and break up, but they would go on the show with their partners, and then they would like date other people and decide by the end if they wanted to go back to their original partner or if they wanted to go with their new partner. And I mean, it's messy as hell, as many queer romance artifacts are. But I mean, like going back to Heated Rivalry as like a function of the romance genre, like I think there are so many tropes that we like see just kind of created over and over again, and even throughout like the Game Changers novels, you know, like there's the whole series too. My mom most notably was like, she was reading all of them in a row, and she was like, the sex is the same in all of them. And I was
Yeah.
like, Mom, like, I mean, I guess you don't really read them all in a row. Like, I guess not. So she's like really, she has like recency bias. But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of tropes that are existent in these novels. I mean, enemies, well, not enemies to lovers, arch rivals to lovers, as we said. I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody
and
wants to
you also have in Game Changers, you have like the class divide, like coming from different words. So like the working class versus millionaire, and yeah, that's basically a skip.
Yeah,
That's the trope there.
yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
think that one is one of the most like tropey, and like the structure of the story is still very attached to exactly how you tell this love story, and you won't like play with anything in the structure. I think Rachel Reed has become more comfortable with experimenting and playing in later
Mhm.
books, but that one being the first one is for me like, oh, this is a romance novel. There's no question about it.
My friends that are visiting right now, I'm getting them to watch the show for the first
Mhm.
time, and I give little context and bits here and there, like funny whatever. And after we watched the skip episode last night, and they were like, I can't see him as anything other than Captain America. It's like Stucky. Like so many of the Marvel movies, they're like, all I see is Stucky, and I was like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything, I ruined it.
I shouldn't have said anything. No, I've just been getting texts from Bree that are like, the lesbians gave me allergies. Like,
So fast. They clocked the U-hauling so fast. Like as soon as they were in the bar where he was like, stay, I want you to stay. They were like, U-haul, they're U-hauling. I
they're
was like, oh
U-hauling.
my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the genres, real life or romantic, are in that episode.
No, literally. Okay, so how do we want to say that it like complicate? Do we want to talk about how maybe it complicates the romance genre a little bit, or do we think it's like very much formulaic? It's along those lines, and we can talk other
I think
books too. Go ahead, Katie.
I think the structure matters, right? So in a romance novel, it's not a serial television show that's told across multiple episodes where you keep stringing along different plot lines, right? The romance novel is this kind of contained thing. It has a beginning, middle, and end. There's an arc to it,
Mhm.
right? And so that structure has a certain history that readers definitely expected, that book to follow a certain pattern. And then for the TV show, right, it's turning it into more of a serial
Mhm.
story. And so, but viewers also expect it to follow serial patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And so each of them in their own way are following certain norms, right? One is the norm for romance novels, one is the norms for like romance or soap kind of series, right? And so in that sense, there are patterns that both of them are following. But I do think one of the things that I find really interesting about Heated Rivalry is the way that, because of the context of their job, it's constantly resisting
Mm.
the perfect, tidy ending,
Yeah.
right? Even the book can't give you a perfect, tidy kind of ending, at least not the first
Mm.
book, right?
Yeah.
So there's this way in which there's this kind of constant push and pull between
Yeah.
like giving you the bow at the end that kind of wraps everything up versus kind of needing it to kind of trail off and never fully resolve
Yeah,
everything.
I fully agree with that. I think now it what is going to be really interesting is that even though these books are like part of a series, and I remember asking this last week, like how the existence of the show and this new structure that a show asks for, how is that gonna affect the way Rachel Reed is writing the next book? Like how are we gonna still be like very attached to this is a romance novel, or are we like exploring something else? What's gonna happen? I was curious to think about whether or not the performances of the actors are gonna affect the way that she's gonna write the characters. I hope so. So I do think that that is one of like the magical stuff about adaptation when the source material is still in construction, is that they start feeding each other in a way that I don't think we're gonna keep getting like a game changer kind of structure right now, because and what you're saying, Katie, like the context of hockey as an industry is gonna make it really hard for us to continue like just following and as you said, we haven't been following it to the letter so far either because it's impossible. So I appreciate it. One thing I appreciate is that we like Skip and Holanov do not have like the crisis in the middle of the book is not
Oh,
about
the third act breakup.
misunderstanding. Yeah, it's not about misunderstanding. I appreciate that. That is a not did not finish for me. Like as soon as you could have communicated something better and just didn't, you don't understand. I can explain. I hate that. That is something
Mhm.
I would immediately drop it. And I really appreciate how it's the outside word that makes it so difficult. Of course, also the inside universe of each character, like insecurities and context of immigration, of culture, of race, of coming out. But it's in a way that you are always aware of the corner that Rachel Reed
Mhm.
is always about to write herself in. You know, like how are they gonna solve this with hockey being what it is?
Yeah.
Which keeps me on my toes and avoids the problem that Amanda was talking about earlier. Like, oh, I already know how this is gonna play.
It's
Like,
gonna end.
I
Yeah.
when I read romance, I love to know that it's gonna end well. That's why I read it. It helps with my anxiety, but I don't know. I don't want to know exactly how. And I appreciate that with these stories, I was always surprised on how we get to the like mostly happy ending for now.
Yeah. That was like honestly the only thing getting me through like episode 4 of the TV show was the fact that it's a romance novel and it has to have a happily ever after. Like that was like after I watched that cuz I was watching it like as it was coming out, so I had like a week between episode 4 and like even like the end of episode 2 and between episode 4, like the only thing that was keeping me alive was like I know that they end up together because it's a romance novel and it has to have a happily ever after. And so like I can see how it definitely conforms to that, like to that, and how I found like comfort in that because I was
Hmm.
like, if I was watching this and I had no idea what was going on, I would be emotionally distraught after episode 4, and I was still. So, Bree, watch out. That's all I gotta say. I know you're. I know
Oh,
you're
you
finishing.
haven't?
No, I finished it. No, I finished it.
Oh, you
Oh,
finished it? Okay.
okay, okay.
T.
Good.
All right.
I get to
I
watch
On
my
the nick
friends
of
finish it
time.
tonight, and I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I literally like still even to this day I have to watch like 4, 5, and 6 all right in a row because if
Yeah.
I go and like leave time between 4 and 5, I get upset. Like-
See, I spent the whole TV show actually not trusting that I was going to get a happy ending
oh
because it was an adaptation, right? And the way the serial works is the serial has to constantly give you a cliffhanger. So I kept expecting, I really watched the whole first season thinking it's not going to end. It's going to end on a cliffhanger. I'm not going to get resolution. So I was so relieved by the time we got to that final episode and got to the credits
yes,
kind of rolling
yes.
and the way it kind of trails off. Like, I was just like, thank God. Okay. Because I was just spending the whole time bracing for the serial TV cliffhanger to happen.
Yes.
And I mean, it does still end with a bit of a cliffhanger, but it feels much gentler than it could have been.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. Yeah, it is
That
like a
is
happy
fair.
for now.
I think a lot of us were expecting it to end when David goes to the
Mhm.
cottage
And
and
catches
sees
them.
them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
was expecting that at first, and then I was like, nah. The next episode is long enough that we're gonna get more than that. But to the last second, I was like, are we gonna get the coming out scene? Are we gonna get
Yeah.
like the parents being okay with it, or is that the way we start next season? Because of course, what is brilliant about the long game is that you start in a really good place, right? And that's how you know it's not gonna be easy.
I had text Lauren like something about do we just need more Canadian produced because
Apparently.
right like
The
it's
answer is
so
yes.
beautiful, right, is that the thing? Because I'm like you, Katie, like there has to be, but then
Yeah.
there wasn't, and I'm like, is this a fact like that it's Canadian produced?
I think it's
Hmm.
I
You
I
know,
don't think yeah, I mean, I can agree with the Canadian produced and I can agree cuz like I don't think this show would be what it is if it was US produced. And like I would love to like pick y'all's brains
that's
about
what
that
I'm
because
saying.
Yeah, like they would
Like
have never put that much sex in this show.
number
Like,
Oh,
one.
right.
like
Uh-huh.
I think Jacob was talking in an interview and he was saying that like they didn't want them to have sex until like episode 5 when he was giving it to American producers. Like, girl, no, it's a romance novel. Like,
It's a
that's
romance novel, and that's also like what drives the romance is the hooking up.
Yeah.
So what are we just gonna change the whole storyline of the book because
yeah,
they're going at it
yeah.
And
in the
also
book.
besides the Canadian part, I was just imagining if the French had produced it, we would have more sex. But
I hate that
I
I muted myself because the gasp like that I just let out. Like, could you imagine? Come on, come on.
um but also the fact that it was like a small project and they
Yeah.
didn't know if they're gonna be renewed. So that really helped. That I think that this, if it wasn't Crave Canada but something bigger, being like, this is gonna do numbers, this is gonna do great, we're gonna have a second season, we would have a great cliffhanger and we wouldn't have that resolution by the end.
Yeah, and I think it's like I think it's the trust in like letting people create things that are like meaningful to them and it's like I don't know, like I hate reboot culture, I hate sequel culture, like I hate like I'm very excited to see The Devil Wears Prada 2, but it is not my want or desire for media. Like I love stories that are just, you know, they stand on their own. They're a little, you know, they're like important to a small group of people, you know, and I love that they told this. And so I think it's not just that it's a Canada creation, but also that it is like, it is something that somebody really cares about. And like, I will shit on Rachel Reed every day. I am her number one hater, as I've already said. But like, she did create these really interesting characters to an extent, and Jacob really amplified that. And I think like one of the things that I keep coming back to is Hudson and Connor did such a
Yeah.
good job with them.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, you know, what drives this show and drives my interest in this show is not only that it's a funny little romance novel, but it's also, you know, it's
Yeah,
taking care of
their
people.
hesitancy, it's like 2 seconds of each and every time, but it's
Mm.
so delicious. Mm, I'm
It's
gonna
so good.
watch it again.
I love yearning. I love yearning. Yearning is good.
I
It's
love
important.
I love a reheat. I love a reheat. Okay, do we have anything else we want to say about romance novels, heated rivalry? Anything else we want to add here?
I have a question for our guests. How do
Okay.
we feel? Lauren is gonna laugh. How do we feel about watching this with our parents?
Okay, so there is background to this story. I have never I have sat through half an episode with my mother at one point, but my parents listen to the podcast. My dad has not watched it. My mom has.
I
I don't know. Like my mom is like the person who made me a reader, and so like, you know, we bond over stuff like this, you know. So I don't think it's weird, but I guess it's weird to laugh.
I don't think it's I don't like to categorize things into weird and not weird, first of all. But I did, like, after you said, like, I did that with my mom. My mom loves when I recommend a series to her and I watched like the first episode with her
Yeah.
and I tried. But at some point I had to go because the last time we watched a queer show with a gay man, I had to explain to her what cruising was,
Mm.
and I was like, I was struggling. I was
Yeah.
struggling. Because she was like, are they gonna have sex in the park? Are they gonna have sex in the bathroom? And at some point I was like, this is gay culture! To my very straight mother.
I will say the episode we
Yeah.
did watch together was the cottage, so it's like the least
Okay.
maybe
Okay.
raunchy of all
Okay.
of them. I think I would never watch like episodes 1 or 2 or 4 with my mom, but like 5
Mhm.
or 6, you know.
I
Okay.
tried to get my mom to start it when she was here, and I think she was too tired. But or like, there was something going on. I think I had to get ready for like a field day. But I don't. I wanted her to continue it when I was at work, so she would like have something to do while I was gone, and not go through all my cabinets like she had been doing. Um, but I have to follow up with her and see if she finished it, because she'll like binge like whatever. Like I know she's seen gay stuff before, and so but like watching it with her, I was like on my phone, like on Sudoku or like on Twitter. I was just like, okay, I'm like on my phone and you're watching on the couch with her, but it's like it's hard.
Yeah, I
think it depends on the parents.
Yeah.
I think it kind of,
Yeah.
Some parents are going to be totally chill about watching that stuff. Some parents are not. I'm not watching it with my dad. That has never going to happen in a million years.
No, and I wouldn't watch it with my dad. Like I was.
I was about to say that. Like I tried with my mother, but with my dad, I would never.
When I found out that my dad listened to the pod, I was like, yeah, but I like talk about sex on the pod. Like...
See, my dad's dead, so that's good.
And I asked this because my family, like, even though we're a Colombian family, culturally Catholic, all of that, my family is like very open about sex. Like, I got the best sex education I got it at home, not at school. And my father will go into details about condoms and about a lot of stuff. To the limited, very straight knowledge, they did their best, and we have never shied away of talking about that. My mom talks to me about her dates, my father does the same. Like, that's completely okay, but there was something about me having to explain again queer culture to someone who's not queer.
Yeah,
That was getting on my nerves. So as soon as the gym scene started, I was like, I must go, my cat is hungry. Bye.
No, and I get shade for this every episode, so it's fine.
My mom would. She watches Drag Race. It would be fine.
Listen, and
She knows.
exactly.
She knows the thing.
She knows.
That's good.
That's excellent. We love that.
She might be a little taken aback, but like it would be fine.
She would be fine. Okay, so I guess I do have a final question. Where do you see, as like both a person who interacts with romance as like a reader, but then also a person who does like romance as a scholar, or has connections to it, where do you see like romance as a genre kind of going after the huge popularity of Heated Rivalry? Like, do we see more romance productions like this in the future? Do we see more novels like this? What do you think kind of is the future of this? Anyone?
Yeah, just real quick. I think right now, generally, the book adaptation is having a moment. Okay. What was I watching? Uncommon Women. What's the Apple TV?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I just looked up Apple TV women show. Imperfect Women.
Imperfect Women. It's the auntie in me. I always mess up show names.
It's
but Imperfect
Washington,
Women, yes. So basically, I feel like the book adaptation is having a moment. I will say that the way that Heated Rivalry's fandom has, because this is a part of like my book conversations, I'm trying to think about like how online fandom is also producing the industry in a way now, because it's digitized and more visible, the thing. And so I would say that is happening more and more, also from what I'm seeing book talk wise. I think the romance genre in particular, because of Heated Rivalry, will go, those types of shows will be produced more, or romance novels will be produced more, just like the Imperfect Women thriller genre of book is being produced more and more, right? So I do think that tide probably will start to change more. There's I think I saw something about one of the Black romance novelists who writes a lot of straight couples is having, I think one of her books is being produced as well. Her name is Kennedy Ryan. But I do think because of how the fandom has really blown this up, that's just like an industry thing, but specifically fandom and not just the popularity of it. Does that make sense? Like that difference. And I'm looking forward to it for sure. But I'm a little cautious because, again, if it's not going to be as good as Heated Rivalry was, and you Americanize it how American does, I don't know. I'm a little. It's going to happen, but yeah. What are the cliffhangers? What are the like American sensibilities around telling a story that will ruin it? Basically, that's what I'm like. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I agree with Brie in the sense that I feel like Heated Rivalry as a phenomena is having more impact in the sphere of television, maybe than it would be in the sphere of publishing. It's a phenomenon in publishing, but the thing is, it was massively popular in publishing before the TV show came out. And, it's not like there weren't a million romances that didn't exist alongside it, right? So in that sense, that genre is going to continue to flourish and grow. It may have gained more readers in the process, but I feel like the shift that I'm more curious about is what's going on in terms of TV. Does this mean we're going to see more queer content? Does it mean we're going to see more romances? Does it mean we're going to see more adaptations? We haven't talked at all about Bridgerton, but Bridgerton
Right.
is lurking kind of in all of this too, right? It's a big influence that's kind of motivating a lot of these adaptations. So I think in that sense, I suspect the stuff that we'll see that's maybe a little more new or pushing in a newer direction is more from TV maybe than from print.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, Bridgerton is also now adopting a queer story, which I know has
Mhm.
gotten a lot of pushback from fans of the books, and just people in general. And, like, we don't see a lot of lesbian relationships on television. It is, severely underrepresented. There was a lesbian show that I think Crave Canada was going to do about softball that may or may not be tabled or shelved or something. And so, like, just the desire, I think. Also, I think, like, something to talk about with Heated Rivalry is, I think, one of the reasons why this works so well is because of the NHL and how homophobic the NHL is, and how, like, secretive that makes the relationship, and how, like, interesting and, like, seductive it makes it. I think telling a story about queer female athletes where they are allowed to be, or they are more less homophobic, they are more often in relationships even with other players, I think it doesn't have the same kind of, like, broader seductive appeal, maybe. But maybe this, opens up the area for more just queer romances in general, where everybody doesn't die at the end, which we would love. We would love. We would love.
Would love that.
Would love that. Amanda Lau, do you want to add anything about where you think this goes?
No, I think I'm just listening and learning from our guests. I was recommending to Brie Scam, which there's not a single week I don't I go without mentioning this, but because of how there's an original version and then there's all these retellings across of Europe that retell like sometimes to the letter the story, and sometimes they go like beyond that or they change it, and it's super interesting how they use social media to engage the public. Like characters have their own like social media and they will post on like real time, and you will get like more of the story if you were following them. So and we recently got the latest season of the newest version, that is the Croatian version, and it was really interesting because this was the first queer season of this Croatian version, and it was very tame because of censorship, whereas we were very used to like scam. It was like scam France, scam Italia, scam Spain, scam everywhere. Like in Europe it was like full nudity sometimes, or like it was not tame at all because like of how culturally accepted queer sex was, and nudity, and how we engage with bodies in different cultures. And then you get Croatia, and there was a lot of like shock in seeing this story that we have seen portrayed like 10 times, this love story between queer people. We have seen it like at least 10 versions of it, and this was the first time that you barely see them kiss, right? And sometimes the kisses look like not real kisses and just like using the perspective of the camera so the actors don't have to kiss. So I think it's a phenomenon that it's worth studying and it's worth looking into. Unfortunately, the website that had all the versions available with all the subtitles just last week had to take everything down because the company
Mm.
that owns every single scam remake sent them like a cease and desist.
Oh wow.
So I'm gonna have to look elsewhere because of course to watch Scam France. It's free on YouTube in France. I watched the Croatian version for free on YouTube because it was available everywhere. So it really
Mm.
depends on country stuff and YouTube being YouTube.
Hashtag VPN.
But really, like, every single season is a love story. And it follows like a lot of like coming of age and a lot of the tropes that we have mentioned today. But to me, what is fascinating is to see how they adapted to each culture to make it like more palatable to the public of that country. But everyone is watching all the versions. Like, we know the story that we're gonna get. Like, we watched the Norwegian original one. So I think when you ask like where is the genre going, I think social media is gonna have that big impact. Sometimes it's gonna be ugly because we're seeing a lot of ugly stuff on
Mm-hmm.
fandom and social media, but sometimes you're gonna have a phenomenon like Scam that has like it's more than a decade old. So I think that is where like I put all my hopes on those type of projects.
Yeah, yeah, bouncing off of that, I think what I hope and what I expect are different things. I hope for more diverse stories. I hope for especially not just but sapphic, but also like for me like finding books and or media that have non-binary characters is really hard, especially ones that have like good plot lines and good like thought out arcs and all of that. Like for me it's hard finding my gender representation there, and then seeing that portrayed in TV is even harder. I mean, you do have characters like in Our Flag Means Death, but like Vico Ortiz is non-binary, both IRL and in the media they've portrayed. I think that's really important, and for me, I think finding that I would hope that we have more of that in the future, especially as there's a lot more non-binary people in the world and trans people out in the world now. So seeing trans stories for me would be really transformative and really important. I hope to see that in media. There is this book. Oh my god, it's about baseball. It has a trans main character. I sent it to my friend and he has it right now, so my mind is slipping me. But that one is really good. But like, especially as we move into Pride and like we see like those Pride sections of bookstores come out, I think perusing that section is going to give me a lot of hope, because my expectations that differ from my hope is that as we move towards a more fascist society and where like things are a lot more oppressive these days,
Mm-hmm.
I fear that it's harder for a lot of like non-heteronormative people to, or then like non-white people to like have media and like have good representation. And so like I bounce back and because not like Heated Rivalry is this phenomenon where we do have this representation, but will we get more like in a good way? You know what I mean? I just have like that fear of the like, will we get more good stuff, or are we going to get like everyone's trying to recreate it and thus make something bad and has no respect for the people they're portraying, and is like just rainbow washing, greenwashing, or like trying to appeal to those people. So I go back and forth in that I hope there's good media out there that comes of this, especially that is inspired by Heated Rivalry. Like there's a lot of really good like trans Heated Rivalry fics that are really good. But my fear in our society the way it is not as bright, I fear. Don't know if that was too much of a downer. Sorry.
No. You're so good. I mean, no, these are definitely all good thoughts to be thinking about as we kind of move into this history and the future of Heated Rivalry. But thank you to our guests for coming on today. I really appreciate you guys spending your evening with us. I loved listening to you talk. I always love listening to you talk. Do you have anything you want to plug where people can find you if you want them to follow you on social media, Google Scholar pages, anything?
I'm vaguely intermittently using Blue Sky these days because social media is failing us, but I'm Katie Didn't at Blue Sky if people are looking for me.
Amazing. Bree?
You can find me talking about blackness, digital scholarship, and fandom at those intersections, and gender
Yeah.
and sexuality. I'm working on building out some stuff, but nothing to share right now.
All right. Well, thank you again. I really love talking romance novels with you both. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Twitter at SRS Pod, or on Instagram or Threads at Since Rookie Season Pod. You can also email us at srspod protonmail.com. We're always looking for feedback on what we talk about on the show. We would love for you to send in anything, voice notes, whatever, just so we can interact with you all. Make sure to rate the podcast 5 stars and to subscribe to us. And yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all soon.
Since Rookie Season is created by Lauren, Lau, and Amanda. Cover art is by Lauren and Lau. Amanda is our editor. Thanks for listening.